didn't do a lot of analysis in looking at it. So looking at programming, you kind of see the effects that being closed down the first half or the second half of March was having. So we're down about 55,000 in revenues. Recurrent events down about 23,000 compared to last year. Concessions, we started out the year pretty strong. Sports arena, I know Sam was pretty pleased with how sports arena and really all the hockey concessions were operating. So it's kind of disappointing. It's at a standstill now, but we are ahead of revenues there. Golf, so facilities again, starting to lose some revenue there. One area we're really fortunate in is property taxes. So we receive the majority of our property taxes up front at the beginning of the year in January, February, March. So in park maintenance, that's mostly the forestry levy. In admin, that's going to be our property taxes for the year. So in total, the first quarter we're up 961,000, but it's primarily because of property taxes, basically. Courts Plus, you're starting to see the revenue impacts. They're down 125,100. VSS, it's a timing issue. When I ran these reports, business office is still entering activity for March. I think there's some receivables that need to be backdated from VSS that haven't come in yet. We've had discussions with Brian. VSS, we're projecting VSS to at least stay the same as with revenues, maybe even have some additional revenues this year just with the increased Meals on Wheels. And there's some additional funding with the bills that have been passing. With expenses, it's hard to compare at this point. Expenses are down 304,000, but it's mainly because of capital transfers. It's admin. We had less capital transfers this year than we did in 2019. For golf, it's going to be additional equipment purchased earlier. So it's hard to do the comparison of expenses for the first quarter at this point. And as I said, the budget numbers at this point are kind of irrelevant. But I thought it was important just to go through these numbers and show kind of where we're at this year compared to last year. But if you have any questions on this, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can move on to the next topic.
Jason, I know you're going to talk about this, but more the 2021 budget. I just think for 2020 is going to be impossible. And I know you're still hearing from the legislature what they're going to do, and hopefully they'll just not require it, and we just do our best to survive, for lack of a better word. But I don't know if you know any more now, or if you'll know more before our next budget meeting, what that direction will be.
So that brings us into this next topic here. So we'll go into the COVID-19 budget impact. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the legislative updates. So as Rusty was saying, there's been some discussion about approving budgets could be postponed for 2021. I had some discussions with some other people, and it's really preliminary at this point. They haven't even talked to the county officials of whether it'd even be feasible. So at this point, I think we have to move forward like we're still going to have to meet those deadlines. Hopefully, I'm hopeful that it's delayed, but I don't know if we can plan at this point. Next week, there is going to be a League of Cities call, and I think that's where they discuss this type of stuff, and I'm scheduled to be on that call, so hopefully I get some more information on it during that call.
Sounds good, thanks, Jason.
Yep. But then, like Rusty said, mill levy rates could possibly be kept the same from 2020 to 2021. So another piece that we're watching is FEMA. So FEMA is providing funding for eligible emergency protective measures related to COVID-19. So historically, FEMA has not provided funding for lost revenue. So that's going to be the majority of our costs, or majority of the way that we're impacted through this whole thing. But Park District's eligible costs likely going to be pretty minimal. It's the PPE, sanitizers, those types of things, but we are planning on submitting our costs. There was a request for public assistance meeting. It was supposed to be held today, but they ended up canceling it. They're putting it online, so I'll watch that tomorrow, but that's the step that we missed during last year's flood. So we should be set for that. We should be eligible to submit our costs our own rather than having to go through the city like we did for last year. There's a Family First Coronavirus Response Act. So the main way that we're being impacted by this is as a governmental entity, we're required to offer additional sick and family sick leave. But as a governmental entity, we're not eligible for payroll tax credits that are offered to other private employers. There is a component of it where those wages, you don't have to pay, the employer portion of Social Security tax is waived. So apparently we are eligible for that. So we're working through Paylocity for that and kind of make sure everything's working properly. But that's going to be a pretty minor savings, but it's a little bit of savings, but for the most part, we're not eligible for any of the payroll tax credits. There's the Coronavirus Aid Relief Economic Security Act, so the CARES Act. Majority of the funding is being provided to small businesses. Big component of it is the payroll protection program, which the governments are not eligible for. Local governments are eligible to receive funding for a portion of this act, but their population must exceed 500,000 people. The majority of the funds for local government are provided to the states, and they're going to decide how to disperse. My understanding, this initial funding that was provided to the states, nothing is going to be come back to the cities or park districts or municipalities. So I know there are still some other bills and legislation. We're watching those, but nothing has passed as of yet. Then there's fairly new program that was really just recently announced by the Federal Reserve. So it's a municipal liquidity facility, provides direct funding to state and local governments. My understanding, it's a low interest loan that needs to be repaid to offset tax revenues. I don't know if the park district would be eligible for it, and honestly, I don't think we'd really need it. So it's something that's out there, but I don't think it's really going to be something that we're going to be looking into. But we're continuing to watch it. There's bills that are constantly going through, so we're trying to stay on top, and we'll submit for anything that we are eligible for. So next, revenue impacts, and Dave Leaker had talked about this at the meeting on Tuesday. So what Tyson, I did was, yeah.
Before you go on, can you or someone else tell us how many staff we have that would currently be falling under that FFCRA?
Leaker, do you know?
I was thinking it was 3 right now.
That's what I was thinking too.
I think 2 of them might be related to someone in their home might have been exposed, and then one of them was dealing with daycare school closing.
Sure. Can you, I'm assuming that when we're all is said and done with this, we'll get kind of a summation of how we've been impacted in those regards as far as numbers and things?
Yeah, we'll be tracking that through our payroll system on, you know, hours where they're allocated to, and then everybody's been instructed just to, you know, if you're unsure about whether to track it or do it, just make sure we do it. We can always, you know, whether it's FEMA or some other reimbursement act later, we have the information.
Okay, thank you.
So any other questions before we move on? Okay, so revenue impacts. Dave Leaker had discussed this on Tuesday at the board meeting. But for the revenue impacts, basically what I did was I looked at what did we collect last year during these same periods, and assuming we're not going to collect them this year. So what did we collect last year? And we'll count that as lost revenue for this year. It's not perfect, but it gives us a pretty good estimate of what we'd be missing out on by not being open. So for Courts Plus, $500,000 through May. Beyond that, I haven't started projecting out. There's just so many variables of not knowing when we're going to open or what programs or to what extent we are open. So I've just done it through May at this point. Park District overall, $341,000. The golf numbers I need to adjust now. So when I put this together, I estimated green fees at 50% revenue. I assume that driving range and carts would not be running in April and May. I think it sounds like we will be starting to run carts and range in a little unlimited capacity, so I'll have to adjust that. I also haven't checked on season passes. I need to check on that with Chris, but I think season pass has been going pretty well over the past couple of days. And then also another thing to keep in mind with golf, I'm using last year as our base year. So last year was a flood year. This year we should be able to get out ahead, especially at Edgewood. So hopefully golf ends up being a little more favorable than what we're anticipating here. And then decrease in state aid. So this one, we don't have any data to support it at this point. We received about $3 million last year. So I estimate a 20% decrease from prior year payments. And really at this point, it's a guess. I think I should have some more information on that by the next budget meeting of whether that's even accurate or not. But we know it's going to be going down, just aren't exactly sure what that number is. This number necessarily wouldn't be through May 31st either. It would be the total state aid decrease for the entire year. So what I'm estimating right now is 1.6 million in estimated lost revenue through May.
So talk a little bit about Course Plus, and I'm not sure, you know, if contracts are put on vacation, if we're giving refunds, if it's both. I mean, what's all happening there? Or are we just not collecting anything until we open again, or putting months on the end of the contract? But give us an idea of what's going on.
Carolyn, you want to handle that one?
Basically, we are not billing until we open again. We have not prorated March yet because we're waiting to see if we're going to, at the end of this, start in the middle of the month or start at the beginning of the month, or if we're going to start with partial services. So the March has not been, I guess, settled out yet. But we do not anticipate billing for May either. We did not bill for April. We have asked people if they have a balance from previous months that they would get a hold of us and continue to pay those if they can. And then we've had a few people, of course, that, you know, are canceling or doing other things, but for the most part, people have been appreciative of the fact that we are not billing them, and they're waiting to see, you know, when they can get back into the club. They're appreciating the Group X information that's going out. They wanted to rent our equipment. We said no to that. Kelly sat in on an NDRPA planning meeting for fitness centers and rec centers. And so we are actively putting together plans for a partial, you know, level 1 opening, level 2 opening, level 3 opening. But again, it's up to the governor to tell us when we could even start with an opening process.
So not to put on the spot here, I'm just wondering if you have a rough percentage. I would assume, you know, say you open in May, and I would think maybe a lot of people are going to be cautious, and a lot of people probably put contracts on vacation in the summertime anyway. Maybe you don't see it ramping up again until September. But is there, and I know there is, but what kind of percentage drop off is there typically in the summertime anyway?
I would have to check. I don't know what our numbers were last summer or what we're anticipating for this summer.
So on a non-financial note in relation to Courts Plus and its opening again, and I know again we have more questions than we do answers on these type of things, but I mean, you said we're preparing for a phase 1, 2, or 3 ramping. I mean, if you know, we fall into that category as of May 1st or whatever, or sometime in May, as Rusty alluded, we're prepared to move forward with something along the lines of allowing people to come in and work individually and maintaining 6 feet social distancing, as opposed to opening up classes again, that sort of stuff. We're prepared for those 3 phases. If and when all of a sudden he says tomorrow you can reopen at phase 1, we're ready to go in theory.
I can tell you we have started developing what phase 1, 2, and 3 are. We have not made a final decision, saying that phase 1 means so many people come in the door, we're open these hours, we offer these kind of programs. That we can't say right now today.
Right, but we're recognizing that there's phases, and we're preparing for different phase levels.
Yeah, just like we closed. When we closed, we had been ramping down. You know, we started first with programs, playgrounds, And then we started limiting group X classes and how many people, and we're staying in areas. And we may be moving equipment. We may be starting with certain areas not open because of touch points. That's all on the table, but nothing has been formalized yet.
Thank you, Carolyn.
And I think as Carolyn mentioned earlier, NDRPA has set several virtual tables that deal with fitness centers, finance administration, programming, parks and operations, and all the park districts kind of get together and figure out, what's the best way to, and kind of do it across the board throughout the state. So I think, she said Kelly's working on that right now with other districts around the state. I think pretty good plan we did with them.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in here too. I think it's a win-win kind of thing because, I think when we do a phased opening, we don't even have to say it's a phased opening because I think people will phase in as they feel comfortable. It's not like we're going to open on a Tuesday and just have, every member show up to see what's going on in the gym. I think that plenty of people will purposely stay behind, and so it should be almost like an organic opening that way.
I agree with that, Jerry, to a certain extent. I think it's important that we communicate the levels because, for example, golf. I think when you know ahead of time what the situation is with golf, you love golf beyond belief if you're going to go out and golf in those circumstances because they aren't as anywhere close to as social as the social golfer is going to want. So, and I think that's good because then it phases people back in at levels. So if if you're very clear with them, only individual piece of equipment, you have to clean it before you use it. You have to clean it after you use it. No classes, blah, blah, blah. People are only going to filter in as they feel, not just that they're comfortable coming back, but that they're comfortable within the confines of what the current definition of what using member of Courts Plus.
We have to do that. I just think that people will self-select and be slow to come back into the courts, and that'll help us. But we do have to have all those guards in place.
And we talked about starting already now with some blog information on the Courts Plus website that would indicate what people might be expecting with social distancing and limitations in class sizes, and don't expect the place to be open first thing. So that they aren't going to be surprised by what we have to offer, or they can have a little bit of input on what they would prefer and have access to just a solution.
I'll do my part and stay out of the weight room when you first open. So
let's test it out before you come in.
I've got the COVID-15 going on.
And I'm going to do my part and stay out of the children's playground until you're comfortable having me back too. So.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Other questions about Courts Plus? Hey, Tyson.
All right. How about on revenue in general? Any questions? Should we move on to the next section? Okay. So before we go on to the next one, I just want to say I think everybody on the call realizes the Park District's in a strong financial position. One main reason why we're in this position, and I feel, is because of how we fund capital projects. So we refer to it as our capital reserve, but really we use it as an internal financing mechanism. So the philosophy of the Park District has been to pre-fund projects, pay for them in cash, where I feel like a lot of our comparable entities are borrowing. In the long run, I feel this is saving us money. It's, we're not paying the interest, we're not paying financing costs. And in this situation, it's allowing us to be more nimble and adjust to the current budget situation. It's not sustainable what we're presenting. These are short-term solutions, getting rid of our capital transfers and that stuff. They're not sustainable for the long run, but I think it's something we're going to have to do to adjust to the situation that we're in right now. So also, I just want to make it clear that the situation, it's a challenge to budget effectively. There are just so many variables. We don't know the full extent of how this is going to impact us. We're continuously monitoring this. We're adjusting accordingly, but a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about and strategies I'm going to present are a work in progress at this point. We don't have specific dollar amounts tied to them, but we are working on them. So I just wanted to start off by saying that the first strategy that we're looking at is capitals. So we've identified 1.3 million.
Can I interrupt you once, please?
Yeah. Yep.
Before we go any further, when you say these are kind of short-term strategies, and maybe you can't even answer the question, but what type of timeline are we looking at where it becomes no longer a short term and we've crossed a threshold?
I think this is getting us through 2020. Basically, 2021 we can adjust our budgets accordingly when we put them in practice.
Okay.
So I'm thinking as long as we get through 2020, I don't think we should have any problem getting through 2020. It's just trying to avoid dipping into our general fund reserves, basically.
Okay, thank you.
So capitals, we've identified 1.3 million of capitals that can be deferred to future years. Across the board, we have unscheduled equipment across the park district. That's for the smaller, unbudgeted type supplies, maybe computer that quits working. We've cut that in half for all the departments, so that's about $72,000 reduction. With our capital financing, the philosophy, we've always budgeted $500,000 to be transferred from general fund to capital reserves. We would eliminate that for this year. Lindenwood, I know we increased the mill last year. We're still planning to set aside the value of the mill in a dedicated capital fund for future years. We're likely not moving forward with that project this year. It would be 2021 or after, depending on how this all shakes out. So next, salary savings. So deputy director salary savings. We won't be hiring that position. Did someone say anything?
Can you hit the highlights of the 1.3 million? And not down to the dollar, but what are some of the items that comprise that 1.3 million?
So a lot of them are the transfers that we plan to fund. We fund our asphalt concrete. A lot of them, Dave Beats. A lot of them were Dave Beats. I can't remember off the top of my head what they were exactly.
I hear Rusty. A lot of them, are the transfers like Tyson talked about. Each year we put, like 225,000 into our playground replacement budget. We're not going to do that this year. We're going to carry through as was approved last Tuesday or a week ago Tuesday at the board meeting with our updates. But we're going to basically be bringing that account, within $20,000 of zeroing it out. A lot of those are made up of those sorts of things, whether it be sport court replacement funds, just the general repair and maintenance to playgrounds outside of the replacements. We're just looking really critically at all of those items and still leaving enough in the reserve fund so we can successfully operate through this year and even get us started into next year, but really taking a critical look and trying to reduce in those areas where it's not going to harm us. It's going to hurt. It's all stuff that we want and need, but that's kind of what we've done there. Some of them are a little more easily tangible, like the Osga driving range tee. That was $65,000. We're going to pull that off this year and basically, save those dollars. There's some other ones, Anderson dugouts, we had budgeted 80,000. There was another 20,000 for the concession stand siding out at Anderson. And so basically that's what we've done is we've gone through and really took a critical look at all of those projects that were scheduled and then all of those transfers into our reserve funds.
And Rusty, we also have some, as Dave mentioned, a lot of those one-time capital expenditures, but we also have some reoccurring ones. They get transferred to our Fund 40. And some of those ones that are nearing zero, as he said, once we get done with our playgrounds this year, they'll be within 20,000 of zeroing out. But the ones where we have an adequate base that we can operate this year, we deferred those until next year again. So that saved us quite a bit of money too. But as Tyson mentioned, that they're unsustainable cuts. I mean, we can do it for 1 year, but then we're gonna have to adjust for next year.
Any other questions on capitals? Okay, so salary savings, deputy director, we won't be filling that position. There will be some temporary part-time savings. So we're hiring the minimum amount of essential seasonal employees, utilizing our full-time staff to perform tasks that have historically been performed by seasonal staff. One of our goals through this process is keeping our full-time employees fully employed and fully engaged in doing meaningful work through the park district. So we're still continuing to work on determining savings that are going to be available from there. Professional development. So we're going to reduce the continuing education budget, only provide reimbursement for staff that have certifications related to the park district. COVID-19's kind of helped us restrict travel, but if the restrictions are lifted, we're still only going to allow webinars or local conferences to meet the CEU CPE requirements. Still working on refining those costs to determine the savings.
Hey, let me ask a question on the salary savings. Are we currently under a hiring freeze? And I get it, not necessarily for part-time where you need some seasonal help, but I would assume any other position that's open right now that we're freezing it like pretty much every other company is doing? Or what's our status as far as open positions at this point?
You want me to take that one, Tyson?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Rusty, I would just say, I mean, if it's a replacement position, like if we are replacing somebody that had moved on in park maintenance or something, I think our philosophy would be to replace that. We've talked about some requested positions for 2021 as we work through this year's budget, and those we are delaying a year. So any future additions we're kind of trying to hold off on or postpone. But any replacement positions, I think we'd try to fulfill, as we did with Broadway Square.
I would like right now, and I think there's a marketing specialist that's being advertised.
Yeah, that's one that's a replacement position, and we'd be moving forward with that one.
And we have filled that position. They will start May 1st.
And I still
How many open positions do we have right now?
That was the only full-time position that we had open.
So at this time, we have no other replacement positions to fill?
No.
And can you tell me, I'm sorry, I interrupted Rusty. Rusty, maybe continue.
I was just going to say, I mean, to me, whether it's a replacement or not, it's not a slam dunk that you move forward and hire that position. I think there's nothing new that's hired, and the other ones are case by case. I know we want to keep our people employed, but to me, it's not, I don't want to keep everyone employed if they're not doing anything. So I think some of those folks need to be flexible and potentially pick up some of the slack in our other departments.
And Rusty, I can talk here a little bit. We've gone down that road, and I think our philosophy would be, at least from my perspective, it would be very dependent upon the position. If someone were to leave now, we'd take a real good look at that. But to your point of utilizing staff, Carolyn's team at Courts Plus has done an awesome job. We started with some seasonal workers there that transferred into the parks and operations positions to help us with some of our springtime work. Now even the full-time positions there are starting to come over and help us. So, I want to assure you and the rest of the commissioners that we are doing that with our full-time people and making sure that, as Dave mentioned, we're keeping them engaged in a meaningful way and making sure that, we're getting the work out of the people. So from my perspective, I don't believe that we have people, just kind of hanging around, so to speak, and we're keeping them employed just to kind of do the right thing, I think we're getting the work out of our people.
I would expect that that's what's happening. Obviously, people want to be working. I would be similar to what you just said, Dave, that I think it's important that as a position may come open, that we evaluate whether we really need that position at this time, especially since there's other positions with the seasonal work that might be more important than something where someone departs. And I'm not even going to pick a category because I don't want to feel anyone to feel like they're not valued or vital right now. But there's certain things we're not doing that we may not need to fill that position right now until we can get back to some sense of normal.
Yeah, and I think we take a real hard look at, depending upon the position that would get vacated. I think you're absolutely right. We'd take that real hard look and make sure, is it something we'd need to do immediately, or would it be something that we could delay until we get into a more normal circumstance?
I don't know if this is a Dave Beats question or if this is for someone else, but what do we consider, what's the normal number of essential seasonal employees, and what are we considering the minimal? What numbers are we looking at normally versus what we're looking at for this year to get by?
From my perspective, I think it varies by department. There's a ton of people that it takes to run our programs and our pools and things like that. On the maintenance side of things, we are reducing people because we're getting an influx of full-time and other seasonal staff that we'd like to keep engaged from the Courts Plus group. So from our side of things, or the side that I work most in, we are reducing, and I think there'll be a savings there, while at the same time providing the benefit that these full-time people, we can keep moving and doing things that's outside of their normal job function. But we definitely keep them, engaged with the organization. If we get to the point where we don't have pools, then there's going to be a significant savings there, not only just in pool chemicals and water, but also in staffing costs. And I would think the same things would go for all of the programs and events that we have scheduled.
Do you guys, would you be able to provide us with just kind of a ballpark idea of, let's say, Island Park Pool doesn't open, this is how many people we would have staffed. If we don't run this program, this is how many people we would have staffed. Just kind of give us some ideas. I'd like to have some idea of what the minimal amount is versus what our regular amount is. And I know it's a moving target because right now we're planning on Courts Plus people helping with operations, but if Courts Plus opens, that's obviously going to shift. So I know you can't give me a hard set thing, but getting us some kind of ideas on if we don't have certain things happening, what kind of staff reduction we'd see.
Yeah. We could do that for sure.
Sorry, Vicki, I think, we could probably go through that and just, through our line item budget and kind of pick out the savings there. I mean, if you didn't have Island Park Pool, you could see what right there what our expense or savings are in our lost revenues. But I mean, I think that's easy enough in our detailed line items.
Right. Vicki, are you looking like every summer program and or event that we offer for that information?
I'm just thinking as I'm going here is, I'm just looking at this thinking, is it 100 people that we're not going to have versus 500? Or, I don't really have a set idea. I mean, you guys, I don't want it to be, this is how many T-ball people we're not going to have, and this is how many golf people we're not going to have. You don't have to dial it to that much detail, but if you have some general ideas, if we have half the number of pools open, or if we only open one pool, and if we only have, you guys kind of can decide how you do that. But for me, it would be helpful just to know what's a normal number of temporary / part-time summer seasonal work hours versus what we're probably going to try and manage with this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think if our programs close down completely, whether it's t-ball or baseball or pool. I mean, we have that just in our budget line items that we can figure out. Now, if it comes down to park maintenance and we're trying to do it with, more of a minimum number of people to get our tasks done, it's going to be tough because we really never get everything done because we're always catch up. But I think some of those items that are, if it's just a baseball league canceled or a pool we can come up with those numbers very easy. I think the other ones, as you said, is a moving target. So.
Yeah, I'll get those to you this week.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah, a general idea is helpful. Just to give us some idea of what kind of savings we might actually be talking about.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll break it down from programs to events to facilities, i.e. pool is obviously going to be a main component to that.
Sure. And I don't know if you can do the same with operations or not, but just giving, I don't even know how many seasonal people you hire that are temporary.
Yeah, we can come up with those numbers for sure.
Thank you.
On a different note in relation to that same area, so Fargo Youth Baseball is sending out emails saying unless something changes, they plan on starting, I think it was May 15th, if I remember off the top of my head. But that could change if they get different direction from the park district or other entities. How are we going to handle that going forward? As far as I don't need to know that specific situation, but I'm saying as we're going forward with things and people run programs on our property. The zoo, I mean, is that are we supposed to be leveraging that because that's technically our land that is sitting under? I mean, what is the rules or regulations as far as this sort of stuff goes? How much are we going to impose our own choices on these people and that sort of stuff?
Or just to tag along, Joe, before you answer, I am anticipating that you're communicating directly with the user group, so it's not like anybody's getting out in front of somebody else. I would hope that our communication is coordinated.
Yeah, Dr. Joe, we're having weekly conversations with Fargo Baseball, conversations down to talking to Moorhead as well as West Fargo and some of their programs that they're wanting to know what our timelines are, kind of do a joint deal, but if they're using our facilities, we reached out to those groups. Matt Noah is one that has inquired about renting our facilities. We just told them they're not rentable until further notice, till the governor opens things up and changes that. His rentals on school property, so it's a little bit there, a combination of school and partnership property. It's a little bit different, but we're having conversations with those groups that are using our facilities. So our information, and we're making our decision as well.
And I think a lot of that is a lot of that direction is going to come from whether it be the governor or the state health department on are they going to allow any type of sporting activities or adult sporting activities. I mean, everybody's heard has closed the season at the state level, but and that's their prerogative. But does the governor or the state health department say, okay, we see things trending down and we're going to allow, team activities? I don't know if that's any type of precautionary measures. I don't know how you do anything, but I think you're going to have direction from them.
Yeah, on top of that, we set a conference call with the state of North Dakota, really the recreation people, and talked about facilities. If we get to a phase 2 where we would open programs up, it does talk about opening different team activities. We got to be very careful of that. So we need to have discussions, and it's going to be different all across the state. If you're looking at Valley City, Jamestown, I don't think they're not as impacted as much as we are in Cass County. But we're going to need to have those conversations not only with the state, but locally with West Fargo and Moorhead, make a good educated decision on where we go.
And Dr. Joe, in relation to the zoo, groups that have And it's a little different than renting a facility every week or month or season. And so, again, they have a little more independence than say they do baseball or football or soccer groups.
Yeah, I'm not in any way whatsoever encouraging the idea of imposing ourselves on entities we've not imposed ourselves on before, but I just wanted to make sure we're not liable or something if people make decisions to open things on what's technically our property, like the zoo, if it isn't. I don't know. I don't know exactly what I'm asking, but I just wanted to make sure that that we're making sure that as the park district governmental entity that we're looking out for ourselves on a different level than people that just want to get going again maybe, and making sure that we aren't exposing ourselves by standing back and letting them make their decisions. But I mean, this is just a side note and irrelevant to this, but I really hope people are focused first and foremost on getting kids back to participating in sports. We don't need to play softball if we can't play softball as grown adults. I don't need to sit in the stadium and watch my kid play his baseball game if that's what's going to prohibit baseball from starting again. I think the first most important thing is getting children, small teams recreating again, if at all possible. And I hope that's their focus too.
I think as long as we're following the CDC guidelines and extending that expectation to our user groups, I think that's really where we need to kind of just follow and stick to as a standard. And obviously those change as time goes by, but I think if you use that as our guide, I think we're going to be in decent shape.
Okay, should I move on? Okay, so next, operational savings. So we're working on going through the operating budgets, determine the savings. There's going to be savings just naturally from programs, events not being offered, reductions in service level. So one example of reduction in service level will be the baseball fields. We're still going to need to maintain them. It just won't be to the level that we had to in the past while baseball is actually going on. Facilities. So facilities is one area that's going to be a challenge budgeting. We don't know, what extent they're going to be open. Are they going to be open fully? Are they going to be opened limited? Are they going to be open, not open at all? So we're working on putting together a schedule of key dates for when decisions need to be made for the different facilities and programs. Then last, reserve balances. So the preliminary reserve balances for general fund, 5.1 million. Debt service 5.3, capital funds 9.2 million. So capital funds reserve balance is likely going to be utilized during this period. We won't have the transfers going in like we have in the past. General fund, our goal is not to utilize it, but if we need to, it would be there as a last resort. Debt service shouldn't be impacted this next year. We still have property tax revenues coming in, which covers all the debt service payments. So those should not be impacted. But that's all I have on the COVID-19 budget impacts. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but just a statement. I really, really appreciate it. It looks like you guys, the directors, have been very thoughtful in going through this. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns, and yet you've put this together very eloquently, very succinctly, and at least it gives us a sense of, at least for me, it gives me a sense that we can get through this, and here's how we're going to do it. So thanks for all the hard work and for all the thoughtful work, all the directors.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know, for me, I don't know if it's more a question, but maybe a statement. Looking at our reserve balances and operationally, I mean, to me, everything's on the table and we need to do what we need to do. But capital-wise, and just some of these projects that we've had on the table for a year, 2 years, 3 years, we've got balances here. We have, the 5 mills and the buildings and recreation facilities. some of this stuff, and I might be the only commissioner, but I don't know how the other ones feel. We just can't continue to kick the can down the road. And it's like any preventative maintenance. I mean, at some point you've got to do it, or you're going to hold off for years, and it's just going to be that much worse. So I still think we need to identify some of those collectively and decide which ones we all feel comfortable moving forward with, where it still really doesn't risk our reserves for what we need on the operational side.
I think I would agree with Rusty in some regard, and I think that it's, this might be an opportunity to get some of those taken care of, that we might have some additional staff to be able to help with them, or even the planning or brainstorming or design of some of the things. I'm a little put off by the putting Lindenwood down the road another year. Even if it means we're only partly doing something at Lindenwood, getting started, and at least having a design and moving forward on some of these projects when maybe we'll have time, because we won't have some of the programming or other things going on. I think it's important that we keep moving forward on some of them as well.
And we are doing that, like the Lindenwood example. There's money still being expensed there. We're just, spending some money actually this week doing some additional survey work now that the floodwaters have receded and the snow's gone. I think the bulk of what we would describe previously is we're not going to lay out that large dollar amount to start the road project, but we are going to continue to work on that project overall. We're not just turning away from it. So, and we're doing that overall too. We're identifying areas with our buildings and our infrastructure, that makes sense to do and we need to do. So I just want to assure everyone on the call that we are doing that. And what we showed you here is just some of the areas that we're potentially looking at if and when we need them. So I just want to let you know that we are doing exactly what you guys are saying, and because you're right, there is certain things that we just can't keep neglecting or keep turning away from. We need to do some things, and we're taking that opportunity, as was mentioned, to get some of those done.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. Tyson, maybe just go through what our mills are and what, and you explained last time where you really can't commingle your general fund with the parks and rec facilities, but just basically kind of tell us, and it can just be, rough as far as the dedicated mills, where the general's at 18 and the other two are around 5. But, and then just go through and just say, on the general fund, if there's any restrictions that you know of, or if we can pretty much use, the general fund for what we want to, but there are restrictions tied to the park and rec facility mill.
So for the general fund, there used to be restrictions. I think they used to break it down between pension, health insurance. There's a bunch of different components to it. They got rid of that, but we're still tracking them that way. So we do still track them separately with our pension and everything else, but there are no restrictions on the use of those. Parks and Rec facility, we do commingle that with our general fund like we talked about the last time. It's about $2.8 million, I think, is what's being put into there. That includes, so we can use that for debt service, so our capital lease payments and our payment at Davies Pool. We can use that for Park and Rec facility improvements, and then also the equipment to maintain it. So I think I was looking at, I'm projecting we're going to spend about I think we're going to spend about $600,000 more this next year on Parks and Rec facilities than we have the requirement to. So I think we're going to be okay there. But as far as general fund, there's really no restrictions on it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, should we move into long range capital planning?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so the plan that I sent out it's a draft document at this point. We just wanted to get the commissioner's input on it. So I really don't have, I don't plan on going through each one of these projects individually. I don't know if there's any specific projects commissioners want to talk about. Otherwise, we can start with the priority 1 projects and kind of work our way down. you guys have any preference either way?
I think that's a good process, Tyson.
I would think maybe just, I don't know if it's 1 through 1, 2, and 3, and beyond that, I think we've pretty much agreed the 4s and 5s are a little bit further out, unless some of those have moved up now.
So one of the things that I'll bring up right now is in my discussions with Alex at Fargo Youth Baseball, we still haven't received his list as far as what he sees in that 5-year plan. So a few of these that are up here are obviously baseball related. So we're still waiting on that. And then Alex and whoever he is going to have, Ryan, I guess, is going to meet with Dave Leaker, myself, and Dave Beats and go through that list and see where it falls. So some of these I know were addressed in this document.
Sounds good, thanks, Kevin.
You bet.
Okay, so going through the priority 1 projects, Lindenwood is a priority 1. I don't know if we have any further discussion on that. We've already talked about that a little bit. SOAR plan.
Do we have, and I know it depends on what we plan on putting in there, do you have, and I don't have that schedule with me, just any rough budget number, you know, low to high range?
You know, I have not seen any. Dave Beats, you know, when we went through the master planning previously, if we received any budget numbers?
We had some, but they were, you know, antiquated in my mind. So right now, here just to lay out the process we're utilizing, you know, the road was kind of one of the big ones to get nailed down. And if you remember, that's what we had talked about putting the mill towards. So we're working in that angle and trying to get that designed. We're getting real close. Final survey work is coming. That number is going to be about 1.2 million just for the road from about the info center to make that new loop on the east end of the park. From there, it's, you know, our plan was then to go into the public meeting process once you guys approve the road and we show you what that cost is, then go into the public meeting process and really get the other amenities dialed in. Once we get to that point, then we can start putting a price tag to those. So it's really variable, Rusty. You know, I don't even know if I'd care to take an estimate at it without really knowing what sort of amenities are going to be added and even just upgraded and what those costs may be.
No, that's fair. So the road that we're talking about still has to get us roughly to the 25, 26 foot level. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And we're almost there. We did a lot of work over the winter with identifying and trying to mitigate as many tree impacts as we could. We did a tree study in-house with our forester that, you know, he's got a real neat tool that can show us the value of a tree. And so we made some good decisions based on that information. And so right now we're working to get that final alignment, and I hope to have that by the end of this month or first part of May, and then we'd be able to bring that forward to you to say, you know, here's what we came up with, and then we could really put a number to that cost.
And then still is the thought is the road today as it goes north, would that be completely shut off, or consider using that more of as a primitive trail moving forward?
Our plan would be to use that in the meantime as a primitive trail. A lot of the ideas that were kicked around previously were to take up that asphalt road and basically mill it in place and use that as ballast for a new 12-foot concrete trail that could still get people way out to the east end of the park and hold up better through the flooding, but it wouldn't be the main thoroughfare for vehicles. It would just be an improved, initially it would be, you know, a hard surface trail we'd leave and fix and keep in as best shape as we can. And then eventually it would become, hopefully, if that's the way the direction goes and everybody agrees, to have a nice 12-foot concrete trail around that perimeter.
Dave, can you confirm, talking about that lower road, I know we talked about that around the peninsula towards the gate where the road, the trail turns back up into the trees, but that road that's beyond the gate and the exit, that would be removed, correct? And that would be primitive?
Correct. Yep. That part in one of the models we worked up before, that would definitely be the section that would be removed and turned just to a primitive. But there was, I don't remember which commissioner had the idea of, having the trail go in that same footprint. So it really depends on what we come up with as a group and the desire there. And my feeling is the more of those things that we are kind of inflexible on, we have kind of in our back pocket. So when we go into the public portion of this process, we can, take the suggestions, but kind of steer the conversations, if you will, towards that direction that, around those items that we really don't want to be very flexible on.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay, so the second priority one project is the sports complex, and Dave Leaker talked about that a little bit last week. It's on hold at this point. A big component of the complex is Sanford, and they're not in a position to move forward with that right now. Really, donations, it's not a good time to be asking for donations. So I think as of right now, it's on hold. Another priority one project is Junker Farm. I know that Clay has been working with the Forest Service to update some concessionaire agreements. I don't know if Dave Beets or Dave Leaker, if you guys want to talk on Junker Farm.
Yeah, I can touch base, and this is kind of the master plan for the conservation type park we were looking at up there. Clay's been in talks with the National Park Service out in Boston, and this is something, over the last 30 years, so I don't know, I guess with the covenants related to Junker Farm, there's been some things that have been missed in the past, and we're trying to restore our relationship with the National Park Service, and we need to convert our typical agreements with, whether it's the Children's Museum, Botanical Society. They have a blanket kind of a concessionaires agreement that we need to follow. So Clay's in the process of converting our agreements over to these concessionaire agreements, which hopefully will get us in good standing again with the National Park Service. And he's already had some discussions on, what our thoughts were of trying to turn this, 58 acres into kind of a conservation landmark park in North Fargo, a destination park. And I think we have a lot of interested parties that'd like to be a part of this. It's just a matter of trying to navigate through the National Park Service and making sure they're on board with everything. So we just see that as a number one priority. I think we realize the Children's Museum is one of our, our priorities up there. And with a vet retiring here in a year or so, we try to want to find how do we move that into do we keep it a children's museum? Do we turn it into a children's/science museum? Does that become part of a possible new facility up there with office space for Audubon, Dakota, River Keepers, Science Museum? We're just kind of working on the initial phases and coming up, how do we come up with a site plan for that, I guess? But it is a high priority.
Here's my thought in sports complex, Junker Farm. I think anything where we're leaning on partners today, I would say for the foreseeable future, there are a lot of businesses that are in survival mode and not expansion or giving mode. But I think some of these, maybe we adjust our priorities and focus on maybe ones that we can control, where we're not having to rely on someone else, because this is territory that none of us have been in, and in my mind, it's not short term. I'm sure it's years to get over this financially for a lot of our partners.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, Rusty. It might kind of delay some of those partnerships. I think a couple of them are in pretty good standing with Audubon, Dakota and the archery club. But you're right, there's other ones that might be struggling, and we'll just work through that as we talk with them. I think the good thing about this is you know, the park district would act as maybe kind of collaborating and getting everybody together. And I don't know if there's going to be necessarily a large expense for us, but it's more of a management type thing and maybe maintenance type thing of the outdoor spaces. So no, you're right. And we'll just have to work through that.
This is Vicki. I have a question. A handful of months ago, we had talked about getting into the museum and making some improvements to the things that really needed some repair. And I'm just curious where we're at with completing or moving forward on some of those basic things that we had talked about sprucing up.
Yeah, and we did go up there and had a meeting with a vet, and we made that pitch to her. And it's kind of walking a tightrope, you know, with her. You know, she that's kind of her legacy up there and her baby. And while we pitched that we could help her with new displays and new exhibits, she basically likes what she has there. And just feels like it's the perfect little children's museum up there. And, you know, we offered, and I just think until we can kind of negotiate, you know, how does a children's museum move into the future? And like I said, maybe it's part of a science museum. I think right now she likes it the way it is.
And I'll tack on a little bit here too, Vicki. We did get a listing from her and are working with her on some of the cosmetic repairs, if you will. So that sort of thing is being done now that the weather's warmed and we can do some of the outdoor repairs and even indoor repairs with her. Dave's absolutely right, though. She holds very tightly to how the inside and the displays themselves are arranged and really doesn't want to see anything changed outside of one room, which, you know, it's kind of comical a little bit to me. It's called the ever-changing room, and that's the room that changes all the time. Outside of that, she is very much tied to her displays and feels such a strong ownership there and doesn't really want to see anything changed in those areas.
Well, and I think our plan when this came up, and it might have been Joe, I'm not sure who, somebody proposed, can we make some cosmetic changes and improvements? And I think that's what we were looking at. We weren't looking at turning her upside down and changing the milk a cow display to milk a goat or anything. I think it was more of when you walk through, it would be nice if things worked and were functional. And I was just curious if that was what was happening, or if you were coming back to us as far as what that might cost or entail or any of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree with Vicki. I mean, you don't need to change it from milk a cow, but it would be nice if a child could actually milk the cow while they were using that station. So,
and we did ask her, I mean, if she needs any help, you know, correcting some of these mechanical issues up there, but she's got her own little volunteer maintenance force that she assured us that, you know, they work on these and try to keep things as up to date and working as possible. So, but I realize there are some things that don't work.
But that to me where I have a tough time, that this is still ours, our name is on it. I've been in there have been things that haven't worked forever. And whether she says she likes it or not, I still think we have the obligation to fix it and put together a decent product for our taxpayers.
all right, give me a quick second here to intervene, and then you can do as you say. What if I go back to the table with somebody again, whether it's Dave Leaker or Dave Beats or somebody, and we meet with her and ask to put together a committee of people again to try to help with some of this stuff. I mean, I didn't get a lot of interest from our staff, I guess, before, and we tried to put together a crew of people that included me and a bunch of ladies from United Ways, 40 under 40 or 35 under 35 or whatever, and it fell apart, and I didn't have the time or energy to keep it together. But I know where Rusty's coming from, and I know where you guys are coming from, and I would like to take a stab at trying to find a middle ground with her, because we do have to be respectful of her to a certain extent, but at the same time, Rusty's 100% correct that, you know, the whole reason for me wanting to get involved in this situation for as long as I have is the fact that, you know, people believe that it belongs to us, and that it's a reflection on us. And if she wants to keep it around, which I don't know if that's negotiable or not, but if she wants it to keep it around when she leaves, she needs to let other people get invested in it and make some progress with it so that it's yeah. And I think I can talk to her about that. But like I said, the last time I was there was with Joel, so I don't know. That's an idea before you go and make your answer that you're going to give Rusty right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Dave Beats. I think that's a great approach, Dr. Joe, and I'd be more than willing to help with that and any way I can.
I would also be willing to be a part of that conversation, because I think that's all we really talked about before, was just getting it cleaned up and fixed so that when people visited, it worked. It wasn't that we wanted to come in and recreate the wheel. We just want it to be functioning through her retirement. And at that point, if this is how we feel, then we move to a different direction and we can start planning that, and it takes force after that point.
Yeah, approach it from the standpoint of, we're not here to impose ourselves on you. We're not here to change a bunch of things. We're just here as a public service. Like, guess what? Hey, real exciting. We're here to do whatever we can do to help. So what kind of ideas can we have? Let's get rolling with this and not leave it open to the idea of saying, go away.
Right.
Yeah, we can definitely do that, Dr. Joe.
So I'll, well, Dave Beats, you said that's a good idea, or you want to be involved in it, or who? I mean, somebody on your end want to facilitate that? I don't even know if it's functioning right now.
Yep, I mentioned that I would like to be a part of that. I think there's traction there to be gained, and I'll help any way that I can.
Okay, so should I reach out to her, or is Leaker going to reach out to her, or who I mean,
I can contact you.
And the next question is, I mean, it's probably not even open right now, right? So,
correct.
And is she comfortable meeting even with us in person right now? I don't know.
I think we can find all that out, and we'll line something up.
Thank you. So I would say, Stacy, if you're comfortable with that, just an initial meeting with Dave Beats and I, just to kind of open it up and say, hey, you know, we're going to get some people together. We got some interest from, you know, Stacy's interested, and you know what I mean, and just kind of, you know, some other people at the page. Let's get a group together. You and I were going to do this once before, and we tried to get the group together and didn't. And we owe it to you to make sure that we get a group of people that have more of a connection as far as working with the Park District or being on the board, and let's get back to helping you with this like we had originally planned, and then we'll bring you in at that point. Does that sound fair?
It sounds great.
Thanks for taking that on, Joel.
Okay, so those are our 3 priority 1 projects. Priority 2 project, Island Park pool remodel. So we're currently working on an RFP to hire a consultant to get a better idea of the different options down at Island Park. Kevin, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, the RFPs will be received by May 1st, so we'll deal with that at that time. But costs and all that will be coming down the road as far as where we go from there.
Okay, then that's the only priority 2 project we have on the list right now. Next, moving into priority 3, there's a Brunel property. the Southwest Regional Lake. So that's going to be dependent on the city of Fargo and what they do with the big regional pond.
And just for an update, we do have a meeting coming up this Friday at 1 o'clock that we're going to be kind of discussing that exact topic, so.
So then we have Thorlton Baseball Complex, baseball field, so turfing the baseball field. We have Central Fargo Soccer Complex. I think that's just developing a small central soccer type complex to take some pressure off of the small neighborhood parks.
Exactly.
We've youth baseball fields at Brunsdale. Coliseum paving, which is reaching its end of life. Rose Creek siding, HVAC and parking. And then the Thorlton Little League Complex. So those are the items that we have as a priority 3. So I don't know if there's any discussion on any of those projects.
Well, I think regarding the Thorlton Baseball Complex, that's the larger fields out on 42nd Street. We're currently working with the city of Fargo. Shields Corporation wants to get some type of collector from 45th Street over to 42nd Street. They're in the process of widening 23rd Avenue, and that was part of that street right away they purchased from us to widen 23rd Avenue. But I think they're looking at an additional collector going from west to east. And right now we'll have the Anderson property up for, multiple brokers up for sale. I think with, the economy the way it is, that one might be kind of tough. And we need to discuss with the city of Fargo, what are the possibilities of getting this collector from 45th over to 42nd Street. We've got some ideas we've kicked around, nothing we can present yet, but there may be a way, maybe a win for, the city of Fargo, who's stuck between a rock and a hard place with Shields trying to get some access over to that southwest quadrant of the interstate exchange, and then us trying to get the proper price for our property in relationship to the sports complex. So we're working on that right now. It's a really tricky puzzle. And, once we have something to bring to the commission, we will.
I'm sorry for being out of order, but I want to double back to Island Park for a minute. I don't know what the certainty of the pools is, and nobody really knows for the summer, but this might be the opportunity to figure out how we're going to move forward with having this pool not open. So I don't know if that's something to start considering, is moving that faster than slower.
About reconstruction of the pool, Vicki, or?
Yes.
I think.
Whatever our plan will be with the pool, but if the pool can't be open this summer, it kind of takes away some of the question of, do we put it in the same spot? Do we not put it in the same spot? It just kind of creates some opportunities, possibly.
Well, and that's exactly what we're going to try to discover with, the pool consultant is, do we put it in the same spot? Can we reuse the bathhouse? I mean, the bathhouse is built like a bunker, and if we can possibly remodel that, that's going to be a good savings right there. But those are some of the things we just need to talk about. And I think to try to do something construction-wise this year is just too premature without knowing a price or funding possibilities for it. So,
what's the timeline for the consultant?
As far as the deadline for the consultant is next Friday.
And then what is our expectation as to when someone would have a potential plan for us?
I'd have to go back and look at that RFP.
I believe it's probably more towards the end of July.
I want to say it's the end of July, but I'll see if I can pull it up here.
I mean, this might be an opportunity to, if we can make a decision on a consultant, if we can decide and agree on a plan that, you know, when we don't have a pool that's functional, if we're going to put it in that spot or need to shut down the pool, we might have an opportunity to get started on something rather than waiting. And again, I don't know what the finance or the dollars or any of that is going to be, but it's, you know, we might have a unique opportunity here with pools being potentially closed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great scenario if we had a little more notice. I mean, typically we, you know, if we're gonna bid something out, we wanna bid that out in a January or February to try to get the best prices possible. And I just think with trying to figure out what a study will come up from a consultant, then get a pool architect consultant on board and, you know, schematic design and construction docs. I just, there's no possible way for this year.
So David Volk from Associated Pools put a estimate together back in 19. It was $4.2 million. That's just going exactly what we have right now. So if you're looking at replacing the bathhouse like Dave talked about, you know, you're gonna add a few more $1 million. I can't imagine you're in it for anything less than $5 million to $7 million. Yeah, this is just a pool. Doesn't even talk about the wading pool, or do we go to a splash park in that area? So it's a big dollar ticket you're looking at. Yeah, it'd been nice to capture it during this time, but I just don't think we'd be ready.
Here's a facility that's on my mind, and it's not on this list, but we probably have it someplace. It's the Metro Rec. And I haven't been in there probably for over a year or so. And I know when I was in there, I mean, it's embarrassing to say the least. What are our plans with that? And I get it, you know, we all want the sports complex, but I mean, realistically, where we are with our environment, you know, that's whatever, 4 or 5 years down the road. What's being programmed in the Metro Rec right now? What's our longer term plan? I'm just probably more worried about the liability and condition of the turf and other things in that building if we're still programming in there and realizing we're still going to be using it for the next several years.
Rusty, that facility is mainly a rental facility for the turf. We've got, you know, Fargo Youth Baseball is in there. The archery group is in there. The horseshoe group is in there. FM Athletics has some equipment in there. So, you know, that facility generates a lot of money, but yeah, it all got put on hold with looking at the sports complex and what we wanted to do with that. The turf we had glued down in certain areas because it was buckling, but it seemed to have taken care of that. But I mean, that needs an update, but you know, where do you go with it?
We also have batting cages in there. That's a significant space. And then like obviously soccer practice, but then like Jerry Gores does sports specific trainings in there too that doesn't include balls or anything.
Right.
What is going on there for soccer right now? And I assume before there was a lot more, and if we scale back, it's because of the condition of it. If we had decent turf in there, how much more would it get used? And even if you had the sports complex down the road, I would assume there's probably some appetite for that kind of turf on the lower end of the rental potentially.
You could, I personally think you're going to take away from our existing facility. I think you want to push all those people out to the new complex, if and when that's built.
So is there any soccer going on in there right now?
No, you can't. COVID-19 can't open that pool.
But I mean, what was there last year? What kind of programming? And I'm not saying like just today, but do we typically program that? And are we losing bubble right now for sure?
No, we don't lose anything. Last time, their rentals, but they're still using that facility. I think we generated about $56,000 of profit out of that building. So it's still a good revenue generator, even though it's an eyesore.
Well, if the sports complex is on hold and we're looking at a couple years out, it may be worthwhile to find something to do to at least make it a little more aesthetically pleasing or functional or safer, you know. And again, I haven't been in there either, but you know, I understand that at some point the sports complex is where we want people to go, but right now we don't have a sports complex and it's going to be a long time before then. So it might be something we consider. What would it take to put, you know, better turf in or make it a little better or whatever we're doing?
Yeah, and I think, you know, I don't want to have people think it's not safe. I think, you know, if the turf does pucker, the seams come apart, we do get in there and repair that to make it safe for the athletes that play in there. So as Kevin said, while it's probably not the most appeasing looking building or whatever, we keep it functional, and I think people do appreciate it.
So it is functional and safe.
Yes.
Yeah, and the field turf is you know, adequate. It's just it's the low ceilings that prohibit. I mean, that has been the knock that people have on its use. But I mean, people come in, they use it for their intended purposes, and they get out. It's not a destination. People aren't sticking around and hitting the concession stands and having food and stuff, but they're getting in, utilizing the only turf we have in town, and getting out. So.
What's the hourly rental rate?
I believe it's $48 an hour.
That's for one side or both sides?
One side.
So $48 per ring.
Right.
How about the batting cages? What is, any idea what
That's
that
Fargo
is?
Parks. That's Fargo baseball.
Yeah, that's baseball. That's not us.
So do they rent that? Do they rent that from us for just a flat out yearly rental rate, or are we just giving it to them as?
I'd have to defer that because that happened well before my time down here.
I would think we just give it to them out of the goodness of our heart.
That used to be a theme.
It was Babe Ruth baseball, and then when they joined, and I don't believe we receive any fee for that, at least to my knowledge. Tyson might be able to answer that better, but you know, once the two merged, then Fargo Youth Baseball went in there, but I don't believe we've ever been compensated, to my knowledge, for the space.
And same with archery, same with FMS.
Same with FM Athletics equipment storage as well.
Yeah. I don't believe there's any rent.
$1, I believe.
I think it's $1 a year.
Yep.
Okay, is there any other projects we want to discuss?
And I think, as Kevin mentioned earlier, we did list these baseball projects as threes until they come to us and present their master plan or 5-10-year capital plan, and possibly some of these could move up or down.
Yeah, and the thing that's important with the baseball people, and I talked to Ryan, I've talked to Alex, is they've got a 5-year plan, and they want to know where the park district is, so that, you know, and when we met with them in the past, you know, Ryan kind of alluded to the fact that once they present, here's what we want to do, they don't know what the process is and how does it get from a submission of an idea to yes, we're going to fund it, no, we're not going to fund it, or yes, it works for this year, no, it doesn't work for that year. And so that we can work in parallel with them to get them to a place, because what Ryan used for an example one time is that, you know, he had a bunch of money, he wanted to spend it, he came to us, thought we were going to do it, then we weren't going to do it, and then he lost the money because whoever was going to donate it on his end had to do something with it or lose the ability to gift it to somebody. So he's asking us to come up with, you know, what's a reasonable agreement that we could work collaboratively with him, and they're bringing money to the table. And in fact, I haven't seen the plan yet, but the way he's explained it to me the first year, he's not asking for any money from the park district, but he wants to get some things done. So that would be, and what I'd like to see is that we come up with a plan or a model that works for all our partners that may bring money to the table. So, you know, if Fargo Hockey wants to do something, or if any of the other youth groups want to do something, then here's the model, here's what it takes, here's how you start, here's the process, and here's what we'll come out the other end and tell you where we're at. And so I'd really like to see us get that model built so that it's transparent, everybody understands, you know, how it is that we arrive at our decisions.
I agree, Jerry. You know,
I talked to Ryan also. They have their plan ready to go to present. I think during the COVID, they just don't know, you know, if they wait until it's done, whether they present it to staff, they'd like to present it to commissioners like we used to at the facilities meeting. And it's my understanding, Jerry, I think it's even beyond 1 year. I want to say they might not even be asking for money probably at least 3 to 5 years out, but more so it's just getting a buy-off plan for ball fields moving forward.
Well, that's why when I met with, or had a conversation with Alex, he has that ready. He was going to present it to Dave and I and Dave and have a conference call on it and discuss it. I still have not seen it yet. I just talked to him, what is today, Wednesday, last Friday, and I don't know where to go with it because, you know, for me, for capital items, I think it needs to run through staff and then we bring it to the commissioners for where we see that plan. Are we going to deviate off of their plan? Who knows, depending on what they've got and how much money they're bringing to the table. That does change the aspect to it, yeah.
And I agree that those are decision points that need to be factored. And, you know, you need to look at, you know, are there any legal implications to the request? You know, how does it fit everything else? But at some point then it needs, if we had that model where we said the request comes in here, it gets vetted and staffed at this place, at this place, at that place, then it comes to the commission for the first reading. We all agree that yes, this is something we want to move forward with, or no, we can't do it. We need to delay, we need whatever we need to do. Then we go back to the youth group and say, here's where we arrived, or not the youth group, but whoever's coming to us with a request.
And we do have that process. Kevin took the lead on that and I think did a good job of, you know, we heard from Ryan and Alex that that's what they wanted from us. And so Kevin's developed that with collaboration from all of us. And so we've got that now. We've got that kind of roadmap, if you will, that when an organization comes, whether it be baseball, hockey, or a different user group, we kind of have that roadmap that shows, okay, here's the first step. You bring it to staff, you get staff input on it. We look through all those things that Jerry just mentioned. Are there side implications that we need to be aware of? And then ultimately it'll end up in front of you folks to make the determination if you agree with us that, you know, this is how we move these things forward. So I just, you know, I want to let you guys know that we've got that, and Kevin has done a lot of work on that.
Yeah, it is online, so people that do contact us, we can have them sent to the online form. You know, Carolyn and her group are working redesigning the website stuff, so it's not as easy to find it, but it kind of follows the guidelines of what Brian has done with the foundation actually. And I know we need to maybe clean it up with Jerry a little bit, but it does lay out the process. You know, I didn't hear anything back from Alex that he had a difficult time navigating through it. So, you know, I know we talked about that in the baseball meeting several months ago, and we do have it up on our website.
Here's a thought, Kevin, and maybe send the process out to the commissioners. We can put it on the agenda at the next board meeting, talk about the process. Maybe commissioners just need to sign off on it and more formalize that process as far as, you know, if it goes to staff, comes to commissioners. And I think that way it's formalized. It's basically what we do, the same as the foundation, unless we just feel what's out there. I didn't even know what's out there. But I think maybe having a discussion with the commissioners might make some sense, and we know what to tell the user group, you know, what to fit.
Well, yeah, and I guess, you know, we're working on that. Kevin's kind of put that process together. I know Jerry had some ideas on a flow chart, working through that. I guess what our thoughts are is an organization makes a request to the staff. We vet it out, we discuss it back with the organization, kind of work out the details, work out any type of future agreements. And then that gets incorporated, you know, as, you know, us meeting with the organization. How does that fit in our long-range capital plan? And if the groups are either not requesting money from the park district or bringing some money to the table, of course, that's going to move it up on the priority list. And especially if they're not asking for any money, that could be an immediate project. They just need to make sure, I mean, we need to make sure they follow all of our requirements for how it's constructed, safety, legal, liability wise, and then these projects can get moving on. I think Kevin's reached out to baseball, and while everybody doing these virtual meetings, we have that ability, and we're just kind of waiting for them to show us what their 5-year capital plan is so we can ask those questions.
And I like Rusty's point as well, because what one of the things that least that we talk about at a staff level is the importance of this, is the continuity of it. And I think it really, if we can formalize it at the board level and say, yes, this is our process, this is how we're going to move ahead, I think it's very comforting from a staff level that we have that. And also, I think it gives you as commissioners that kind of fallback position, if you will, if you need it, or just the go-to position of saying, oh, okay, this is a great idea. I feel it's really worthy, and it's something we'd probably be interested in, but here's the process you need to follow. So from my perspective, I think that is a good point to bring it ahead and really put the final stamp of approval on that process.
I like that. And so there's two pieces. There's here's the process the user group needs to follow, and then we need to clearly articulate, here's the process we will follow as a park district board and staff. You know, and Ryan, we all know Ryan and everything, but you know, he'll stamp his feet on questions like, how long is this going to take from start to finish? You know, what can I ask for? You know, 50-50, outdoor turf. You know, I need to know what things I can ask for and what I can't. And then, you know, the part that's in my head that I'm struggling with is if he's got a 5-year plan, I don't know how comfortable I am agreeing to year 5 now, but at least how do we entertain that? Because, you know, there could be another pandemic in 3 years, which would throw what we've said in 2020. We'd say, yeah, we do this in 2025, and all of a sudden, 5 years down the road, how do we deal with that? That's the part that kind of, we got to be able to articulate that back to the user community.
I think this is where the true issue it lies in all of this, right? It's like you prepare a meal for everybody, and everybody sits down to eat, and somebody says, all right, so yeah, I'm done eating, can I have seconds? So you look over there to see what's left, and you look at the table, and people are eating, and you say, yeah, I think, and okay, thanks, I'll go get it. So he goes and gets his seconds, sits back down, and people are still relaxing, socializing, eating, and all of a sudden he says, well, there's still more food left over there. Is it okay if I go back and have thirds? And it's like, you're looking at the people that are still eating, you're seeing if anybody else is going to want seconds. I mean, do you want to force seconds on them now if that's because they want to move forward? I mean, that's really where the concern with Ryan is that he's saying, well, hey, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Can't I move forward? You say you're willing to fund, but you also feel like you want to let these other groups that are moving at a different pace have the appropriate time to potentially put forward and whatever. And so I see both sides of the whole situation, and I understand why it's so difficult. And Jerry, you're 100% right when you're saying, so he wants a commitment for all 5 years worth of funding, and then all of a sudden maybe somebody else comes forward with a big project and they haven't come forward to us at all before, and we want to fund that, and we want to change our mind about funding year 5 of his project for that year and maybe do it in year 6, but we've agreed to it now at year 2, year 5. So yeah,
So maybe part of our answer back is we can't commit to a 5-year plan, but we can commit to a stratified plan. So here's tier 1. We can commit. We'll look at it. We can commit to it, whatever. And then once we get that done, then we'll go to step 2. And then so instead of having so much years tied to it, we just say let's knock off the first thing first. Then we go to the second. I mean, that might be an answer in how we deal with that.
I think if we had a full process for this whole this model that we put together, and let the staff, between the staff and the commissioners, determine what the timelines look like. But in the big picture, it eliminates any kind of favoritism down the road, and it's a sustainable model moving forward for projects we don't even know about yet. And that's what I like about it. It goes far beyond the five commissioners and the staff that's in place right now, and it kind of sets us up for a good future.
That's a good point. Very good point.
So I think it's a very consistent model that everyone knows what they need to do, and it's well defined. I just look at it more as us like we pre-fund capital projects. Like I said, I think with this baseball, it's probably 3 or 5 years down the road until they ask for money, and I don't know what kind of money. But if we're going to commit to it 5 years out, we pre-fund that. So we're not looking at 5 years down the road trying to come up with X amount of dollars.
Point. Well, the beauty of it is if we've got user groups that are wanting to enhance our facilities and they're helping raise, it's the sports complex model. I mean, if we can get something done for half of the taxpayer dollars because the user group is coming with their share of the fix, that's just a win-win, and we've got to figure out how we can capitalize on it. The foundation model, I think, that's very clear. It's simple. It's a lot more simple. But everybody understands the foundation model. You get your application in by this date, it'll get reviewed, it'll get blessed, and it'll get chopped, and at the end of the day, we'll have a decision. And so that's very clear. If we can somehow take that model and build it into more of the capital projects model, that would be good.
Well, that capital project plan that's online right now is some in bits and pieces were taken off of other park districts. So not like it was a brainchild of mine, it was bits and pieces of exactly what other park districts are doing. So
I think the nice thing too about a plan is it's a good collaboration between our staff and the commission. Because they're going to present a plan to you, but I'm going to lean on you guys to say, this group might be a priority. You guys are going to say, well, yeah, it'd be nice to have, but is that really a priority to us? Where at the end of the day, it has to be a priority for both groups.
Well, and beyond that even, let's theorize or speculate out into the future. Let's say we have 10 really active user groups that can generate all kinds of money. Well, suddenly there's no way we could probably fund from 10 different user groups, all the projects they might throw at us. So how are we going to decide that we're going to do, we're going to bite this apple and we'll take that piece of the banana and try to satisfy these very aggressive, well-organized user communities? We have to have a model that can be scalable and replicable so that we can be consistent.
Okay, so is this going to be brought to the board meeting at some point?
I guess we can look at that. We want to bring it to the May facility committee meeting.
I would recommend bringing it there from my perspective, and then, allowing the discussion to take place based off of what's been created so far and kind of flesh it out. And then from there, if we feel we need more work, we can, or else we'll bring it ahead then to the next board meeting. That's just my opinion.
I agree. I agree with Dave.
Yes, I'm on board with that.
Sounds good to me.
We'll put it on the May facility committee meeting.
So
Okay,
Ty, for wrapping this meeting up, I have a question on the May 6th meeting. Maybe just go through what you think you want to present with that, knowing it's only 2 weeks out. And is there that much more new stuff to talk about, or do we kick that meeting out a little bit longer?
We can kick it out if it works for your guys' schedule. It'd be up to Tara to try to coordinate all 5 schedules and find a meeting time. So she's not gonna be too happy with me, but we can. It would be the Ide Bailey presentation, which if we could kick that out a couple weeks, it might help actually. We could talk about the 10-year capital plan, but I don't know if there's going to be much to talk about at that point. And then it'd be the May 20 or the 2021 budget, just going through kind of where we're at with property values and that type of stuff.
Tyson, is that?
I was wondering too, just to give you a little bit more time during this poll, round up more, more pertinent information. I just feel if we do it in 2 weeks, I don't know if we're going to have a lot more information than we have right now. That's just my personal thought.
I guess one thing is we do need to start moving forward with planning like we're going to be putting the budget together for 2021. That we're going to have to follow the dates that have been established in the past. But we can maybe start working on those. Yeah, it's up to you.
Tyson, is that?
What's that?
I'm okay with meeting on the 6th, and maybe it's just a shorter meeting because we don't have the full everything to look at yet, but keeping the ball moving forward. And then as far as meeting again, or even if we have to meet an additional time, right now nobody's getting on an airplane, and now might be the best time to have additional meetings if we need to, because we're all kind of staying put.
Yeah, so the next budget meeting after May 6th would be July 8th. So we could put another one in the middle somewhere.
Tyson, at what time do you need to set the value of the mill or set kind of our revenue schedule?
What do you mean, Dave?
Well, just so, are we gonna take the new construction growth and, is there a certain date we need to decide so you can kind of figure out what we're gonna have for revenue and taxes for next year?
So state aid's going to factor into this quite a bit too. I already have the number from the city of what they're projecting for next year. So really state aid is going to be kind of the big thing that's up in the air where that's going to be next year.
Oh, I got you. Okay, so it's just a matter of if we keep our mill levy the same and whatever the growth and new construction is, that just goes on top.
Yeah, when we do the budget, we're just balancing our total revenues to our expenses. So I have the tax numbers already. It's just the state aid numbers is what we're not going to know.
Okay.
Hey, that number 5%-ish, know the break between new and existing?
Yeah, so it's about a 5% increase. It's 2.2% new growth, 2.7 existing.
Okay.
What time is that meeting scheduled for on the?
At 3 o'clock on
Okay.
on May.
Yeah.
Yeah,
May
same
6th.
time. Yep.
Thank you.
I guess, Tyson, I would leave that up to you, whether you think we need to keep that meeting and you have enough information, or even if it's an hour, or if you want to kick that out.
Okay, I'll think about it and talk with the directors tomorrow, and we'll come up with a plan.
But I think still behind the scenes, I mean, you guys are doing what you need to do budget-wise. I mean, that continues to move forward.
Yep. Okay, we'll talk it through and we'll let you guys know if we need to reschedule. So if there's anything on the capital plan that any projects you don't agree with the priority, just let me know. Anything else, we'll plan on finalizing that and having it ready in May. Other than that, nothing else for me.
Does anybody else have any questions, concerns?
Nope, enjoy the beautiful weather.
All righty, you guys have a good day.
Hey, Dave, I have a question.
Okay.
Did you already hit the gavel?
Nope.
I'm just wondering with the ever-changing times, if it's easier for us to have a standing meeting, if we need to be making any decisions every 2 weeks that Tara can take off the schedule, or if it's easier for Tara to throw one together if we need one. I have a feeling over the course of the next month or two, or who knows what, that we may have some decisions to be making.
About facility openings you're talking or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything you'll need the board to act on, I'm not sure. I'm just wondering if it's easier if we have a standing plan for a meeting every couple weeks, or if you can just add the agenda items to meetings that we already have planned, or what might work best or easiest.
Well, I think maybe, you know, we don't necessarily have to set up a meeting, but if there's a certain time that works better for everybody, like a Wednesday or Thursday at 3 p.m. and we know everybody's available and we need to schedule and we can do that.
Okay.
Does 3 o'clock work for everybody usually? Or is there a better time?
Right now it does. Works for me.
Early mornings are better for me.
And that works for me as well.
So maybe we just pick the day and pick the time, and if we need one, that's what we'd shoot for. We'll say Wednesdays at 9 a.m. or Thursdays at 9 a.m. And that's what, make it easier for Tara to schedule if we need one.
Works for me. That works for me.
Works for me.
Thursday works better.
Either is fine with me.
Okay, Wednesday it is at 9 o'clock if we have any future meetings with you.
Hey, Dave.
That'll be our first target time. Go ahead.
Hey, Dave.
Yes.
How are people doing? How's the staff doing? Are they, does it seem like we're kind of getting tired of being in this situation? Are they hanging in there? Are they okay? What's the feeling?
And I'm gonna give my opinion. I'm a little more remote. Beats or Kevin or Carolyn better insight. But I mean, to me, I think with the weather getting better and calming down a little bit, it seems a little better on my standpoint. Be way off. Anybody else?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit. I think it's, you have people on each end of the scale is what I call it. And you have some that are still very worried and they're anxious and and you got others that think this is no big deal and we don't understand what all the fuss is about, and you got a whole group of people in between those 2 points. I think it's better, as Dave mentioned, now that the weather's warmer, at least for the team I work with, they're able to be outside more. There's a little bit of new concern when we're hearing in the news about some of these manufacturing plants where the whole workforce essentially is getting impacted. But outside of those things, I think our staff is okay. I think they're, I know they're happy that they're still employed. They're seeing friends and relatives that aren't in the same condition as we are, and so I know they're grateful for that. So it's kind of hard to say, and it goes up and down with the weeks and the days that go by. People definitely are getting sick of it and tired of it, but overall, I'd say we're doing pretty well.
I would say for staff at the depot, at least in my department, people are holding their own. They're getting jobs done that they've probably been putting off. Getting out to these different facilities to make sure that things are getting taken care of. So it is frustrating because, yesterday we didn't have any bathrooms in the depot because of the construction outside. So a lot of people work from home. Becky, we make accommodations for people where they can even answer their phone from the phones that are coming in on their cell phones. And 23 phone calls yesterday morning, and probably 90% of those were on golf. So, it's good, but it's frustrating at the same time.
Yeah, and I would say golf, of course, is excited. They're opening, and they have something new to look forward to. Course Plus is, again, finishing up projects. They're also looking at other departments to see how they can help. Marketing is crazy busy. There's so many one-offs right now. You might think that they've slowed down, but there's been enough to replace and enough to justify again having that position filled, because we have the regular golf kinds of things that take time and the training of someone, but we also have the one-offs, and there's a lot there for the marketing staff. And Concessions is basically filling in all kinds of places that they can, waiting to see when programs can start and they can also be participating. And the campground, of course, looking at opening May 1 and offering some single rider bikes May 1 as well.
Thank you. I have another question. With the city of Fargo going to be requiring their staff to wear face masks, has this been a discussion item for you guys?
We're making masks. We finally got our order of masks in, so we're making those available for staff that want them. We really probably haven't discussed making them mandatory at this time.
Okay. And I would assume our operations staff are the ones that would naturally struggle the most with distance based on projects and work they're doing. Would that be right?
Actually, it's fairly good, Vicki. A lot of the work that we can do, people are either in a singular piece of equipment, or we have enough space where we can, keep that minimum of 6 feet between people. One of the challenges we are running into is on the vehicle side of things. We made the recommendation in the guideline, and we're enforcing it, that there's only one person per vehicle. We did today just ask the state epidemiologist if there was an opportunity for if people wore masks, could we again go in the same vehicle? He kind of let it be up to our tolerance level, but the information we got back is we're going to stick with just keeping one person per vehicle. So that's kind of a challenge that we're going to have to work through and figure out. But really, from the operations side and the park maintenance side, we're able to keep that distancing fairly well. We've staggered start times in the morning. We've staggered lunch and break times, and we keep to that distancing all throughout those processes. When we do have big groups starting at the same time, we'll have like the golf group, get instruction in one portion of the building. We'll have the forestry group in another portion. We'll have the park group, in another portion. And sometimes now when it's nice, they're doing it outside. So I think we're doing fairly well. You know, it seems like we'd have a lot of people working close together, but that just isn't the case. You know, we're able to keep a pretty good distance.
Thank you. And Dave, I think as far as the vehicles at this point, I think if the public, and you know, not that everything we do is just because of public image, but I think if we were piling more than two people, two or more people in a vehicle, that we'd be getting some input from the public saying, hey, look at this, why are Fargo Parks people, you know, riding in vehicles together when they shouldn't be? And so I think, you know, being aware of what people notice from us too is something to keep in mind when we make some decisions here.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point.
And then Dave, piggybacking onto the more vehicles or less people in vehicles, and this maybe isn't a you question, but we're checking motor vehicle records on the additional people driving, I would assume.
If they're new people, yeah, we're basically still keeping to our full-time people driving
Okay.
our main equipment. We do have seasonal staff, and they go through a background check. So yes, everybody that drives a Park District vehicle has gone through our background check.
And we're checking their driving record.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, no other questions. We can turn everybody loose.
Thank you guys.
Have a great day.
All right, everyone, have a good one.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.